Freddy versus Jason. Place your bets.
And we're back with episode 8.3 of Monday Night Frights. Tonight we're talking about the greatest battle in horror history. It's, of course, Freddy versus Jason!
Ah!
Come on, what was that? We love a wee bit of glove action, Danny.
We do love gloving up.
Unfortunately, we don't have anything Jason related yet. Maybe in a future...
Yeah, someday.
Maybe in a future episode we will.
I think you can tell who our fave is.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not. I'm going to keep mine and pick my
I can't. I've got tea. I can't really drink tea with.
Try and like two finger hook it.
Ooh. Got your nose.
Got your eyeballs. He does that a
can't.
couple of times in this fucking. Yeah.
I'm holding up this hand. That was a trick.
Oh,
I went all
magic!
David Blaine there, so I did.
Straight up spooky magic.
Anyway, we're here to talk about Freddy versus Jason, which is the final chapter in our Elm Street.
Is it though?
Yes, Daniel, it is.
It's up to you, folks. You at home can decide. Is this the end of our Elm Street journey, or will we visit the remake, reboot,
Dun, dun,
the
dun.
piece of shit that is 2011?
Look,
when did the
I think 2011. I think you're right.
Was
it
2011? Yeah, it's up to you. If enough of you say, "Aye, cover that," and we'll cover that, and we won't be happy about it, but we'll do it for you because we love you.
Okay, let's do it. If we get people commenting, we'll do it, and if not, then it's destiny. It's fate. You know, the fans have decided.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Anyway, let's talk about this mental movie. It's the 20th anniversary of Freddy vs. Jason, which is crazy. Earlier this year, they celebrated the 20th anniversary. It's crazy to think this was 20 years ago. I remember going to the cinema to watch it. I remember being super, super excited because I'd seen New Nightmare in the cinema, but I was only 11 when it came out. And so I kind of, I was a big Freddy fan, but I hadn't followed the development or the production and didn't, I understood it, but I still didn't really understand what it meant and what they were doing with that film. But whenever this came out, I was, 20 years old when this came out and fully had sort of been following the progress of it and not really in depth, but like, I was like, this is going to be crazy. I've, up to that point, I'd never witnessed anything like this before in horror. So, it was super, super exciting and I absolutely fucking loved it.
Yeah.
It's back then.
A great time. Oh, back.
Have you I still love the film. Yeah. I think now I'm obviously a little bit more critical of it.
Oh yeah.
And I can have fun with it. I still love it to bits. Such a fun movie.
Like I said, I was only 10 when this hit the cinemas, so far too young to be going and enjoying it on the big screen. But I did come around to it after I'd watched all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, and then watched this off the back of those. Then I hadn't actually seen any Friday the 13th movies, so this was actually my first Jason Voorhees visit, which again then piqued my interest in that. But yeah, I remember at the time watching it and just being like, yeah, this is great. Like, this is, Freddy's top of his game, and there's another cool bad guy what's this guy's deal all about? I knew obviously all Friday the 13th and Camp Crystal Lake and all, but I hadn't actually watched any of the films yet, so it was kind of cool getting to see his backstory and stuff, because you get quite a lot of the origin stories for both the characters in this movie, which is, quite interesting and good. But yeah, like, I just remember at the time watching and being like, fuck yeah, there's a lot of, I think, fuck yeah moments in this. Watching it back now, some of those fuck yeah moments, you're kind of like, this is a lot of fucking zip wire pulling shit going on, real silly, cheesy, over the topness. But again, yeah, I'm still like, no, this is great. And the one thing I was really looking forward to was the fucking new metal soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's the one thing in my head. I was like, the soundtrack to this is just fucking heavy with new metal, and it didn't disappoint revisiting it. So for that,
I was getting into all that stuff back then as well. I was quite into like classic rock and that kind of stuff, but new metal was becoming a big thing, and I remember the soundtrack being very,
It wouldn't be
influential to me.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a noughties horror film without a bit of new
Yeah,
metal.
of course. Yeah, yeah.
Most of them tended to end on a new metal track. This
Hmm.
film's just like needle drops everywhere. Like,
Yeah. Um, yeah. So it was directed by Ronny Yu, who famous for his kind of over the top films of in the 80s and throughout the 90s. But he had also directed one of his most famous films was Bride with White Hair, but he had also directed Bride of Chucky.
mm-hmm.
Bride of Chucky. So
Again,
watch this space.
yep.
Anyway, it was also written by two newcomers, Shannon and Swift, who hadn't really written any feature films before this, and this was their big break into the screenwriter community. And they're brilliant, by the way. They're brilliant on Twitter. If you go and follow them on Twitter, they are quite responsive to a lot of fans, and they love the horror community. And a little while ago, they did sort of talk a little bit more about some of their other ideas that didn't make it into this script, which I going to go into some detail in this episode. So bear with me. We'll get to it eventually because this is one of those films that there was about 20 different scripts, and then they were all, nah, that we don't like that. Let's get a new writer in to write a new script. No, we don't like that either. Let's get another new writer in. So there's all these different ideas, and where do they go with the story, and how do they get these guys together? So I'm eager to talk about that later on in the episode. Shannon and Swift would end up writing the Friday the 13th remake.
Okay.
A couple of years after this, which is actually a pretty decent remake. It's a remake. It's not really a straight up remake of the first one, obviously. It's more of the first three films kind of blended together. And then they also wrote Baywatch as well, which is a bit of a change of pace for them.
Yeah.
But it stars Monica Keenan, Jason Ritter, and Catherine Isabel is in this as well. It's one of her early films. I think she's great in this. Obviously, she's famous from Ginger Snaps, which we've covered on the channel before. It also stars Kelly Rowland, which was if there was one thing you needed in your late 90s, early 2000s movie was a new metal soundtrack. You also needed like a rapper stroke R&B singer to be one of the main
100%.
cast.
Yeah, exactly. And bring that personality to it. There's a
That
line
realness.
Freddy delivers towards the end of this film towards Kelly Rowland that had me just like,
I know.
Oh,
I
but
remember.
Then she retorts back at him with something else that made me go,
oh, spicy.
I was like, oh shit, those lines would not go down well in this day and age.
And like I remember a couple of years ago, the film was being sort of revisited a lot on social media, and people were like calling her out and all, and being like, "Oh, she said this." It was like she's a character in a film who read a script.
Yeah.
And who was sitting lines from the script, like what's I mean, it wasn't too deep, but it was just like, get over it, mate. It's
it was the style at the time.
It was the style, and also it was a film. Like, wise up.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm definitely watching it back now. I was like, ooh.
But so basic plot of the film, without going into too much detail right now, because it is a very convoluted plot and premise, and there's a lot that unfolds throughout the film. It goes to flashbacks of Jason's childhood and a little bit of Freddy at the start, flashbacks to him before he turned into Freddy, and it kind of there's a few subplots there that maybe they didn't necessarily need.
No,
but it was a bit more convoluted than I remembered actually. But the basic premise is that Freddy Krueger he's weak. People have forgotten who he is. He's been, basically banished by all the people of Springwood. They've forgotten his name. None of the kids now know who he is anymore.
I just want my children.
Yeah. So he's
he's
lost the fear factor.
Yeah, this one I think this one definitely leans into the whole kind of like Freddy's a pedo thing, doesn't it?
Yeah,
definitely. Like before it's kind of like before, yes, it's alluded to that he went for like kids, but most of the time it's been like teenagers. Like teenagers have always kind of been his thing. But this film with like all the missing kids posters and all, I was like, this one definitely
Yeah.
seems to allude more to pedos.
Well, I think we did mention it in one of the earlier episodes that we covered in one of the films, and you can go back on the channel and watch all the Elm Street episodes that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
But we did mention that the kids that he goes after now are teenagers, but
Yeah.
it felt like the kids that he went after before he was killed by the parents of Elm Street were all really young children.
Yep.
So there was a shift there, obviously, at some point, and it did allude to the fact that originally he was supposed to be a child molester, and then they changed it a little bit for the original film, and then obviously that was brought back for the remake. To sort of, most people don't really like the remake, but I think a lot of people don't like the fact that he was a child molester.
Yeah, they took away, I think, a lot of his charm and made him just absolute nonce.
Yeah.
People aren't fans of nonces. Who knew?
So Freddy Krueger is weak in this film, and he basically is trying to get his fear factor back and return to Elm Street. But to do that, he needs to create fear again. He needs the kids to remember who he is. So he resurrects Jason Voorhees to go on a killing spree, and then sort of let the people think that it's him that's doing it. And then that will create the fear again, and he can return and come back to his old self again. Just be a well nightmare stuck and ghouly.
Exactly.
Which eventually does happen.
Yep.
Yeah, it does happen. Of course, it happens. But in the process of that happening, Jason sort of his fame takes over a little bit, and Freddy gets a wee bit jealous, and then they have their battle, which turns into
not even fame. He's not
two
just
fights.
He's stealing his kills. He keeps stealing. It's when it's the point where he starts stealing Freddy's kills. And Freddy's like, "Hey, that was mine.
Stop that!
Stop that. That was mine.
You bastard!"
Man, that whole like opening sequence when Freddy's kind of letting us know, that he's a child killer and he needs to strike fear into their hearts, and he was so much worse whenever they killed him and stuff. That whole like opening monologue with the like best bits montage.
Yeah, and they show clips
loved it. Yeah. Fucking, I was all about just watching that. I was like, this is the exact nice wee thing I need going into this for this series. Us talking about all the Nightmare on Elm Streets and stuff, because they picked all the best kills.
Yeah,
they had the soundtrack in there, and then that nice lead in to him resurrecting Jason in the form of Mama Voorhees. I was like, fuck it. And then the wee bit of the Friday the 13th theme coming in after the Nightmare on Elm Street theme. Beautiful.
Yeah, it was really well put together, and I love seeing Betsy Palmer back. Freddy obviously is Pamela Voorhees in that intro, and I thought it was fucking brilliant.
So good.
And it's just really well written, and we talked about the script is a bit all over the place, and it's very convoluted, but they got that part right, and I feel like it does lean towards being more of a Freddy movie than being a Jason movie.
Yeah, I think it's definitely
for most part.
Yeah, like Freddy's definitely the big bad antagonist in this, and Jason kind of becomes the hero a wee bit. Like I know he is going around doing bad shit, like he's going around killing people, like, but ultimately, like even the people Jason kills kind of deserve it. Like they kind of like the guys he kills are all kind of assholes.
They're all shitty characters.
Like one of them is a rapist. Like that moment kind of just happens, and you're like, that dude's gonna rape her, and then he gets killed, and you're like, oh well, he deserves that. So it's kind of like, is Jason ultimately the hero of the piece?
I think it was a good call from the writers, because Jason is kind of that silent killer. He does have the cool factor, and so does Freddy, but Freddy's more of a talker, and
he's the showman. And there's that moment, the moment we were saying about with the spicy dialogue between Freddy and Kelly Rowland's character is that's Freddy showing that he's the showman. He has to get the attention because the attention's coming from him. But the opening to this, I think, really kicks it off properly. Like it kicks it off so well.
Great opening. The budget was about 30 million, which is fairly pretty big, I think, for any of the films in either of the franchises, obviously up to that point. But it took about 116 million at the box office, which is massive,
Mhm.
and the most successful of the franchise.
Yep.
Which is kind of hard to fathom, really, when you think about the other films, which, some of the other films are better films overall, but
Yep.
this was such an event
I was going to
in,
say the expectations
yeah,
of the fan base
yeah,
probably for
not
this
just
one.
horror, but in cinema in general.
Well,
I
it was
think
two
a
of the
lot,
biggest
yeah,
bads. Like,
yeah, a lot of non-horror fans would have been watching this from the outskirts, from the fringes and going, "Oh, who's going to win this?" And and they really played in that because obviously they did the big press conference leading up to the release, and they made it look like a big boxing,
mm,
press conference, and it was, that got a lot of attention, and it's what they did with this movie and the lead up to it, was phenomenal, and it really, really built it up to be this huge, huge fight. And
did
I,
it?
I don't think we've seen anything like this. Although obviously we
I was
have,
going to say,
Godzilla, Kong, and all happening now, and
yeah,
there's
and
been
Alien vs
things.
Predator, and
Yeah, it obviously did really well, but it sort of got mixed reviews. The fans cried out for it. It happened, and I think most of the fans loved it. Obviously,
Mhm.
you're going to have some toxic knobs that are going to be like, "Oh,
Of
excuse
course.
me, actually, that would never have happened." But I think in general, most of the
Well received.
most of the fans loved it. The hardcore critics probably didn't like it. So we're going to get into a little bit of development first. This might be a wee bit lengthy because there's a lot to talk about.
Ooh.
I haven't written everything down, but there's a couple of points that I want to talk about, and I think most people will probably know a lot of these facts, but I don't know if you've done much research on the scripts, but there was a
I
lot
have
of
done.
scripts. You
Hmm.
have not done any?
I've no. Again, I know that some of the stuff off the back of this was developed into like graphic novels and that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
thing, but that's about the extent.
Yeah, I think we briefly mentioned that in one of the Evil Dead
Hmm.
episodes that we did, which you can go back on the channel and check.
Yes.
We talked about how Freddy versus Jason versus Ash was supposed to be a film, or it was certainly a film that was mentioned. I don't think they ever got to the negotiation stage, but did happen in comic books, so that would be awesome. I would love that.
Yeah, that'd be
I'd
great. I
love to
would
have seen that.
Bruce Campbell versus Robert
Yes,
Englund
I know, I know,
versus
I know.
whoever plays Jason at the time. Yep.
Yeah, so the development for this film began around 1987. The idea first germinated at Paramount contacting New Line about a potential crossover between the two characters, which was basically unheard of. Now you sort of in nowadays with all the different universes and all that stuff, you could sort of see it happening. But back then, man, you're like, fucking hell, like how could this even be a thing?
Yep.
And it was a great idea that was put forward. Unfortunately, no deal could be made for obvious reasons. It all came down to money and rights, and Paramount wanted domestic control and distribution, and then they offered New Line international distribution,
Mhm.
and New Line just said, "Nah, you're all right, mate.
Yeah.
We'll just keep doing what we're doing." Um, and this would have been after no 87. No, so the franchise was still going at that point,
Hmm.
but it was coming down a wee bit. It was starting to ease off
Yep.
and starting to become kind of, there wasn't much money left in the Elm Street franchise at that point. So Sean S. Cunningham, who the original guy behind Friday the 13th, um, also tried again to make this happen after Jason Takes Manhattan, and Wes Craven then went on to make New Nightmare. Obviously, he's the man who created Freddy Krueger,
Hmm.
and so that put everything on hold again. New Nightmare was released in '94, and that's its own thing. It wasn't really part of the franchise because it's meta and it's not really. So they tried to revive the idea again in Jason Goes to Hell. So at the very end credit scene of Jason Goes to Hell, uh, Jason's mask is lying in the ground, and the dust and the sands blown away from it, and the camera zooms in, and you just see his mask sort of fading into the ground, and then this arm comes up, and it's Freddy's arm, and he just pulls the mask into the earth below him, into hell. So that was just like a wee thing that they did, and obviously the fans went fucking mental and was like, "Oh my God, what's happening here? Let's, is this actually going to happen? Is this, going to be a thing going forward?" And they had to wait quite a few years before it did eventually become a thing because of fucking studio executives and production companies
negotiating.
not being able to decide who owns who and who's going to win the fight and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I obviously didn't see that when it came out because I would have been too young. But I remember like rewatching, or when I first watched Friday the 13th franchise years ago, and being like, it just blew me away because I didn't even know it was in there, and I didn't expect it. So, and being such a big fan of Freddy, it really sort of made me go, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
How did it take so long from that point to 2003 for this film to happen? So a couple of years passed, and Jason X, which is Jason in Space, was completed in 1999, and then there was issues with distribution over that, and it didn't actually get released until 2002, I think. And it didn't do very well. It was one of the worst performing films of the Friday the 13th franchise, although it does contain one of the best kills. Have you seen Jason X?
Yeah, it's one of the few. I've only seen the first two and Jason X. Are you
Oh,
going to
wow.
say the kill with when he's in like the simulation and he's got the girl in the sleeping bag and he's just like fucking it against a tree?
No, I was going to say the one with when he pushes the girl's face into the freezing water and her face freezes, and then he just smashes her face and it just cracks everywhere.
Oh fuck! I haven't watched that in ages.
Everybody loves that kill, man. It's
I think
class.
I think we need to. I think Friday the 13th our next franchise.
So.
I think that's
so.
it.
It could be. We'll put a poll up maybe of a couple of different
Ooh.
franchises up in the community on YouTube, and we'll get people to vote and maybe put it on social media as well. Excuse me. So Jason X came out, it did shit, and then it was like, right, we need to do something really fast to kind of keep this franchise going. And then they came around with the idea of trying to make this happen again. At this point, various hot writers, not hot looking, but hot as in, they're going to be hot.
We want this shit. Give us this
hot
shit.
Young writers were hired to write a script for this. And I believe the first guy that wrote a draft was called Louis Abernathy, who wrote Deep Star 6, and he wrote one of the House sequels as well. So he wrote the first script, which was entitled Nightmare 13, Freddy Meets Jason, which was rejected. And I don't know much about the exact details of that, but there was another writer, David J. Shaw, who wrote The Crow and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. He then wrote a draft, which again was rejected. And then there's a couple other different writers brought on. Loads of different people in that circle was brought in to do different drafts and come up with different ideas. And then Ronald D. Moore, who was the man responsible for rejuvenating Battlestar Galactica, he wrote a draft as well. But interestingly enough, Danny, there was a script called Millennium Massacre that was going to be directed by Rob Bottin, who is the special effects maestro behind The Thing. And he's worked on The Howling as well, and loads of. I mean, he's fucking mastermind when it comes to special effects.
Yeah,
he was going to direct it, and then again that fell apart as well, and just
that would have been
mad. Like,
I think that's the one thing that this movie falls down on is its reliance on digital effects over practical effects. Freddy and Jason look incredible. They're the practical effects for them, their makeup and all, brilliant. But
I'm a bit hit miss on Freddy's makeup.
Oh really? Yeah. We'll get into that. Like,
we'll get into it. Yeah,
I enjoyed it, but the reliance on digital effects for some of the kills and some of the fights and stuff.
The early 2000 sort of software wasn't the best.
That fucking pinball moment.
Oh, mate.
Oh,
but even more interestingly enough than Rob Bottin, Guillermo del Toro was attached.
No way.
I say he was attached. He was probably asked. Oh,
yeah.
He was maybe the movie rang
Ooh.
up his agent, was like, "Oh, we'd love to have a meeting with you about Freddy versus Jason," and
Uh-huh.
he either declined straight away or had the meeting and then just said no. But he was attached to it, and
I would
also,
love a Del
yeah,
Toro Freddy and an Elm Street. A
Peter
Del Toro
Jackson
Elm Street would
was
be
also
unreal.
attached to it. So obviously, we know Peter Jackson wrote the script, or wrote a script
Hmm.
for Part 5 before it became Dreamchild.
Yeah.
He wrote a script which apparently they liked, but it just didn't happen for various reasons at New Line. And
Yeah.
New Line obviously have a great relationship with Peter Jackson through
Hmm.
Lord of the Rings, and they asked him to come on board. And I think he was at the point where it's like, I've gone past that point now. I can't really go back
Yeah.
to kind of horror.
Horror and stuff. He
Um,
needs to go back. I would love Peter
he will
Jackson to
he
do
will go back. I
another
think
horror film.
I actually,
Yeah.
I think he will go back very soon. I think there's,
Oh,
I'd love it if he was
oh.
attached to some sort of Elm Street
Do we
project.
know something, Gav? Is there
We don't
something you
know,
want to
we don't know
tell?
anything just yet, but I just have a
Mm,
feeling that he's going to do something big.
I think it'd be great to have Peter Jackson go
Oh my God.
back to his horror roots.
I'd love to see his script actually, him maybe rewriting the script and bringing it back for a new, uh, well, not the start of a franchise, but just
No.
a legacy sequel or something.
A wee Elm Street Legacy sequel would be
Hmm.
delicious right now.
Hmm. I
Hmm.
know. We say it every time we talk about one of these
I
films.
know. I know. Every time we talk about
About
it,
fucking time something happened.
just someone give us something. Give us more Freddy. Like
Yeah.
not 2011 Freddy though. We can avoid that. That'd be great.
Well,
Thanks.
about a month ago, there was a leaked document from
Mhm.
Warner Brothers, who purchased New Line, so they own the rights,
Yep.
and it had A Nightmare on Elm Street on the sheet. So for
Ooh.
a future, it wasn't a future release, but it was in development. So I mean, that could mean anything. It could literally mean, right, we've got a
It's
script, or
just got greenlit, yeah,
yeah, we've
or
got a couple
there's
of
not.
scripts here, and there's
Yeah.
nothing. There's nobody attached to it. There's nothing. So, but I feel like something's going to happen soon within the next couple of years. So David S. Goyer was also hired to write a script. He's very hit and miss.
Hmm.
He did a pass, and then he left the project and was replaced by Shannon and Swift, who came on, and then he came back and it helped them. Apparently, he helped them finish the script. I don't know if there's much truth to that, but I think he was probably more of an advisor on getting that script finished. But somebody else who was spoke to about the film was Rob Zombie as well. And I feel like he would have done a pretty good job because this was just around the time of Corpses, and
Yeah.
he couldn't do it because he was working on this. But like, I feel like he would have done a really good job with that.
I think he could have done something pretty cool with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
and especially kind of just around the Corpses where it's still, obviously that's a dark film, but it's also a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
you know, I think if he had brought some of that to this film, it would have been amazing.
I think he would
Not so
have.
much Devil Rejects because that's a bit more serious and a
Yeah,
bit
but I
darker.
think he could have done more with the dialogue as well. Anyway, I think
Oh
he would have.
God.
Yeah, Freddy's probably got a lot of the best dialogue in this, but that's not really saying a lot, to be
Yeah,
honest.
the dialogue's awful. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
So Ronny Yu was then hired. He actually had been courted before this and then declined it, but then they twisted his arm. Probably offered him an extra 100 grand or something or whatever. I don't know how much they got paid to do it, but he came on. Shannon Swift wrote several endings to their original script, so there's different endings out there. I do think they talk about their endings on a podcast. I want to say it's the Best Movies Never Made podcast, which you have to check out because that's a fucking amazing podcast where they talk about films that didn't make it through or to the end of production.
Mhm.
And they're genre fans, so they do lean a bit more to horror and science fiction, which is great. And there's loads of horror films that they talk about, and I'm pretty sure. I want to say it was definitely that podcast. I could be wrong there. I'll have to hold it out and post it up, but I'm sure it was those guys, and they talk about different endings to their scripts and different ideas that they had. But one of the endings that they had was that Pinhead would rise from hell, and actually he would be the winner of the battle because he
That'd
would
be
just
kind of
take them
cool.
both back down to hell.
I actually thought watching this, I was like, there's definitely nods to Halloween in it, like Laurie,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, and there's a scene where she's walking down the street and the camera's set against a hedge,
Mm-hmm.
and then Will jumps out and grabs
Uh,
her, and I was like, that's fucking Halloween. Like
yeah.
I wouldn't have been surprised if Michael Myers hadn't popped up at some point, because rewatching it for this, I was like, there's definitely nods to Halloween here as well.
Uh-huh.
Again, I think it's a big loving for horror fans in general, especially the holy trinity that is
Yeah.
Nightmare,
Well,
Friday, and Halloween. You
I
know,
think the setup for this film and the way it plays out is very slasher-esque. You know, there's a lot of,
100%. Yeah,
a lot of obviously teenagers. They meet up at the start, they have sex, blah blah, there's parties. It's
drink drugs.
it's very, it plays out
Except,
kind of similar to Scream as well
yeah,
in that
except
way.
they don't really do drugs in this. It's more cigarettes.
Stick your
Ew.
hits at a.
Don't smoke.
They smoke a couple of J's.
They,
Um,
they
Especially
do,
that one
but
point where the guy's like,
the
"Oh,
caramel.
we're doing this really important thing. Oh, but
Mhm.
hang on, I'll just smoke a joint here." Like, what?
Yeah,
Okay, smoke a joint or die,
yeah.
make a fucking decision, mate. And he chooses the wrong decision.
Yep.
So, one of the main talking points about the film is the fact that Kane Hodder didn't return as Jason, which was, massive. He had played Jason in the previous four films, and he was the guy. It was his hand wearing the glove and the Freddy glove that came out
Oh,
at the end. So technically, he played Freddy as well. That's kind of
oh,
a
nice
a little
little
tidbit as
bit
well.
of
But
trivia. Yeah.
he was replaced because apparently he had met the studio and he'd sort of had a gentleman's agreement. He had read the script and all. He had agreed to do it before Ronnie Yu was hired. And then when he was hired, Ronnie Yu was like, "Nah, I want somebody bigger. I want somebody taller," because he wanted that dynamic. He wanted Freddy. Freddy wanted, he's quite Freddy is quite tall, but
Mhm.
he's like hunched over and he's got that kind of ghouly sort of stance, whereas he wanted Jason to be a big, tall, menacing kind
A
of,
wrestler.
yeah, basically that kind of idea. So Ken Kirzinger, he was a stuntman, um, stroke actor, came on and did the part, and he did a good job. Like I think he's
Mhm.
great in this, but a lot of people were pissed off that Kane didn't come back, and I think Kane Hodder still sort of is very pissed off to this day. They
Yeah.
missed the trick there. It would have been nice to have both of those guys on screen because I think they were pretty friendly with each other as well, and they talked about this moment, and then when it came
It
to
wasn't him.
pass,
Yeah.
he got binned, which was kind of shitty.
But disappointing. Yeah.
So we'll talk about the film now. Now that
Mhm.
I've got through all that, I'm sorry for going on, but I felt like I needed to go into some
It's good.
detail about
It's all
the
good.
production stuff. Right. Ooh, where do we start?
Well, we enjoyed the start. We
Uh,
both enjoyed the start. We're fans of the start of the film.
it starts off great.
Mhm.
It gets you really hyped for it. Gets touches on Freddy's backstory. Always love seeing Robert Englund's face. Great start to the film, and then obviously it sort of descends into
Dips.
chaos,
It
madness.
dips. Yeah.
There's ups and
Basically,
downs.
anytime Freddy or Jason is not on screen, it's kind of shit.
Yeah,
So
I just feel like they just try and do way too much. I do like the story that they came up with.
yeah, I think the story, like you said earlier, there's definitely plot points where you're like, all right, but there's also stuff that I feel is particularly underdeveloped. See if it just been like a story, the whole sending Jason to get his name remembered again. Great, love it, all for that. Freddy then getting pissed off because Jason's taking his kills. Love that too. Love whenever Freddy delves into the mind of Jason in order to like eradicate him for good. Love that. And then it's just it doesn't really go. Obviously, it gets stopped because Jason needs to survive in order for the big final fight to happen. But that's something I wish they maybe stayed on a little bit longer, because I really like that moment, that bit when he's like shoving his claw into like little Jason's head. I was like, fuck, like it's kind of, and again, another reason I'm kind of like, I think Jason's the hero here, because
Yeah, it
he's,
definitely is.
he's getting
Well,
absolutely like.
I think as well, like an interesting point about Jason being a killer and a character is that, a lot of people agree with Pamela Voorhees
Mhm.
and be like, she's just a protective mother who's wanting revenge because her kid died because
Yeah, even the way
teenagers were being negligent and
they were
having
being,
sex.
yeah, and doing drugs and
Yeah,
all.
they were being wee bastards.
They were being wee bastards. But even like, yeah, in this they basically say like Jason is like the vengeful protective guardian of Camp
Mm,
Crystal, like, and it's
yeah.
like that is he really a bad guy? Like, if people would stop coming and fucking around his house, like they wouldn't get
Yeah, and
killed.
for the most part of the franchise, it's all set in Camp Crystal Lake. Obviously, there's a couple of films where he goes a bit of
Goes on a wee
wandering.
adventure, yeah.
A wee wander to New York, and then
But yet,
obviously
even in
he
those,
goes into space.
I've seen the space one, but I haven't seen the other. But does somebody take him out of his environment, or does he willingly go out of his environment? Because that's the
Um,
other thing that
well, Jason Takes Manhattan is infamous because he only goes to Manhattan towards the very end of the film where he's on a boat and it takes him to
takes him away.
Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So he actually gets abducted. Is that what
I
you're
think
saying?
I can't actually remember how does he get on the boat? I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I think it was sort of missold in the sense that people thought he was going to be in New York for a lot of the movie. And
Yeah.
it's kind of a meme now. It's kind of a funny thing that we all joke about. But in space, yeah, it's just like fuck, it's just that's a completely different kettle of fish. Like
Mhm.
he's completely changed his whole mask and his physique and everything. It's a weird film that, but it's very fun. I also
Mhm.
just wanted to say one thing, Danny.
Oh,
You see a bit of Diddy in this.
man, you get to see Diddy's a couple of times. There's this film is probably the most Diddy'd out of all the Nightmare films that we've covered.
You do see
Uh,
a fair amount of dids in Friday the 13th, the
okay.
films.
Yes.
Um,
But this one has Diddy's in the opening after Freddy's
yeah,
like little montage. You
exactly. And
get
it's like proper like,
you know,
hello, here's my dids.
yeah.
Um,
Oh
and
yeah,
then you
this one
see,
this film's at 100% is like this is for the boys.
yeah, it's just
Doing it for the boys.
exactly, I know, and I think you do see a wee bit of did later, but it's not quite
You
as full
do.
on.
There's Diddy with Jason's intro. There's Diddy in the shower, the like top down Diddy, and then I think there's another bit of Diddy later, like a boobs. Oh no, it's the bit where fucking Freddy, whenever she goes into Jason's like flashback, and
Oh, why
she goes up to the camp
she's
counselors and
getting
it's like
fucked
you
in the
need to go help
yeah.
him, and then Freddy turns around and is like, what is it he says? He comes out with a fucking one
No, she
liner.
says, "Are you coming?"
Oh,
He's
she's a
like,
real dead
ah.
body. Yeah, he turns around. He's like, she's a real dead body, just flopping
Uh,
around. The daddy's fucking blah 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 blah.
I
All
know.
dead booby, like.
I love that Freddy is kind of narrating the start of the film and he's telling the
Yes.
story and he's the one in charge throughout the whole film until kind of that moment at the end when he's
Mhm.
brought back into the real world, which is a great moment.
Yep.
But as I mentioned, definitely leans in towards being more of a Freddy film. I'm
Mhm.
super excited about that as well because like Freddy had been away for so long. Let's talk about some of the kills. The first kill is obviously
First kill. Well, it's not really. It's the girl at the lake is a dream kill. So
yeah.
does that count? But she
Oh
gets
wow.
he impales her against the tree, and then
Yeah.
she starts changing into all the like victims, all of Jason's
Hmm.
victims, and
Yeah.
then Mama Voorhees appears and turns out to be Freddy, and also yeah, that's the first kill we see on screen, and then the next one is your man, the fucking asshole boyfriend, gets stabbed in the bed and then
Oh yeah,
folded
yeah.
in
Sorry,
half.
that's the kill I'm talking about. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's the first proper kill. And you're sort of
Yeah,
thinking, right, this guy's a complete douche. He
no.
like these
Don't
characters
make me tell you again. I
they're
was like,
pa
see when he came out with that, I was like,
I
fuck
know.
up you.
It's like, mate, I will come there and don't you ever talk to her like that again?
Yeah. Fucking rude pig.
Fucking cunt. But also, like, these characters are paper thin. They're
Mm-hmm.
horrible characters. I mean, even the other guy who's his mate,
I Blake.
you're just like, who's this
He's a
guy?
fucking douche when he's like, have you heard about feng shui?
I
I was
know,
like, stick your feng shui up your
I
hole.
know.
Uh,
So, the yeah, he's obviously banged Catherine Isabel's character. She's having a shower, and
mhm.
then Jason appears and just machetes him, which is class because he's a dick.
Yep.
And then now that it could have ended there, Danny.
Yeah.
But no, he's like, nah. I've stuck my machete through him so many times that he's definitely dead. But I think I'll just fold him in half.
Yep.
And it's very much a Ronny Yu thing, even the way it was shot.
Yeah, let's go that wee bit extra.
The rain outside and the lightning and all the lights flashing, and it just really felt.
Oh no, the lights have gone out.
Yeah.
And the candles and all lighting the scene and stuff. But yeah, 100%. And then even having him like, he was definitely dead, but when he gets folded in half, he still has enough to kind of go.
I know.
Blood coming out of him and all. But yeah, good kill. It was one of those ones where I was just like, yeah, this is what we want.
This is going to be
this type of thing. This is
if we're going to see kills like this is going to be a fun watch.
What we want. Yeah.
And there's some pretty fun kills in it.
There's some fun kills, even the kills that aren't necessarily kills. I love when Freddy makes his first attempt at a kill when Blake's streaming and he's in the middle of the street. We get an iconic Freddy walking down the middle of a street, and the big shadow coming down, and then the shadow fucking comes alive and fucking swipes at him, and he's like, I'm not strong enough yet, but fuck, see when that shadow came
he's
up.
He's like Peter Pan.
He is. He's fucking, except he's doesn't want to stay young, he just wants the young.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually quite like that, even though yes, it's very, the graphics themselves are quite dated, but I like that notion of like Freddy's shadow trying to kill, but he's not quite strong enough yet to pull it off. And yeah. Freddy doesn't really he gets a lot of attempted kills in this, but he doesn't actually have a big body count compared to Jason.
That's because he's not strong enough. Most of the film is about him trying to be strong enough to get the kills. And they really play on that, and it happens very quickly. They sort of figure out, and when after that death, they cut to the police station and they're talking, and the police are all like, "Oh, it's Freddy Krueger." Who? Who? They mentioned somebody called Freddy.
Yeah, and then they just suss it. Yeah, I was like, fuck. I kind of like this idea, like the police are being quite secretive about it, and that I think, I kind of wish they hadn't sussed out as quick, because it is very, as soon as your two boys come from the asylum, it all just clicks into place, and I was a bit like, all right, okay.
This is what I kind of love. I do love the film, but I also have a love-hate relationship with the film, because I love the ideas and I love all the concepts and premises in the film, but it just happens way too quickly, and especially, I don't think the actors are amazing, and they don't really sell their characters or sell the concepts of of what they're trying to do with the plot. But
the only one for me who really sells it, I mean, obviously Robert is Freddy. Like, his dialogue might not be great, but he's always great at selling Freddy. He is Freddy. Yeah. He's Freddy. Your man who played Jason, again, sells it really well, has that real nice lumbering thing. Just like watching the two of them and even their fights and stuff, I was like, you have your own ways, your own style, you are your characters. But did you like how Freddy was like kind of a martial artist, like high kicks and like digs and all, like wee quick punches and knife swipes, whereas like Jason's a wrestler, like he fought like a wrestler. I was just watching it and was like, look at these two guys with their own fighting styles. But the other character that's not obviously like the two main namesakes for the film was Chris Marquette, is that what we call him?
Oh yeah,
Chris Marquette, I like him, and because again he is
Lieberman.
Yeah, wee Lieberman. I liked him. I thought his character was actually like decently acted, and he got some sharp dialogue, and he was like, that was his flavor at that time, was like nerdy, quick-witted, sort of character. Like that was sort of his. He was typecast at that time as of course, wee nerdy quick-wit guy.
Yeah.
Fucking love him, fanboys.
He's great, yeah.
But yeah, he was probably the only one.
And he actually gets to do a decent amount of acting later on in the film as well. You know, good emotional range and stuff. I really like Catherine Isabel. I know she dies early on, but she's great up until that point. And the rest of the cast,
and considering we've got to follow them along for quite a bit, I was like, all right.
Yeah,
guys.
I mean,
I think the only one, like, what do you call, the wee mate from the asylum? Well, like, the fucking bleach tips.
Oh yeah.
As is the style at the time.
What's
The one
his name?
His bit where he's trying not to fall asleep and he sees his brother who committed suicide and
Yeah.
stuff. I was like, that's kind of a nice bit of emotional depth for his
Oh, he was great. No,
character.
he's really good. Yeah, in fact, yeah,
Solid.
he's really good.
That the fucking bit whenever they're trying to get out the asylum though, and he's getting on like a monkey so that he can steal the doctor's pass to get out in the keys. But they add a bit like he's pressing his like ass against the window and all and making monkey noises and jumping around. But they add in a fucking fart noise. But it's it is literally like somebody has a fucking fart machine just.
I know.
I was like, it's like, is that?
I know. Why? I know. It's great though.
There's so many wee silly noises, and the sound design is like not. There's a lot of added sounds that are just like that's silly, that's cartoony. What he's doing, you know?
Yeah, I know, but actually, we're having fun with it, man. And
well,
he's great. I think I want to say his name's Brandon Fletcher or something like that. I could be wrong, but he's pretty good in everything that he's been in. I do think, I that's a part of the story. I liked his story.
Brandon Fletcher is, yeah.
So I liked their story. I liked their backstory where, they thought they left, but actually they were being in the mental asylum and they were being given this drug, Hypnosil, which appears in Dream Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that whole backstory. I just feel like if you add that in with this thing and then you add this thing in, it becomes very convoluted.
It's
the father, the story where
that he said he's seen him kill her and all.
Yeah,
I didn't feel the need for that. If they'd just been like, we kept all these kids away because they still have a memory of Freddy and we want to avoid anybody remembering Freddy, so we just kept them away. That would have been enough for me. You didn't have to add the whole her dad killed her ma. Oh wait, it was Freddy, because it was so obvious too. It was like we all kind of knew. It was like, well, we know it was Freddy. Mm-hmm. It didn't feel like it added any emotional weight or any there was no stake there.
I think if you didn't know, if you hadn't seen the movie previously on a first time watch, you would be kind of considering you wouldn't think that the father was a murderer, but you'd be going, where are they going with this? What is this? Obviously, this is a plot, but it kind of just gets in the way of the main story, and especially when you think that the film is only about 92 minutes long or something.
Yeah.
And, okay, if they had added maybe another 15 minutes and fleshed out a few scenes, you could sort of see how they would need that subplot.
Yeah.
But because it's such a nice trim
it's literally
movie,
it's because they need it later for her finding out how her ma died, and oh look, it's Freddy. And the only cool thing we get out of that is Freddy's fucking demon look, which I think
that's class.
Was fucking the wee spiky ears and the spiky teeth and all. I was like, Demon Freddy.
Wow. I know. That was cool.
I like that. Yeah.
That was cool. So I think one of the things that annoyed me about the film, I love the kills, but I just think that I would have loved a little bit more tension, and there's literally zero tension in this film. Like, there's no, when a kill happens, it just happens. There's no build up. There's a little bit of build up, but it's done in a sort of like typical sort of, as I mentioned, the Bride of Chucky way Ronny Yu's style is that he likes to have a lot of lightning outside of a window and flashing and flashing, instead of having that kind of slow build and making the scene be actually quite tense before something happens. It's
even like
I suppose it works for this type of film, but I feel like I would go ahead.
You're right. It's for me, even the wee girls, the skipping rope girls with the 1-2 Freddy's coming for you. Like normally in all the other Elm Street franchise films we've talked about, like when that happens, like I'm shitting my pants. But it's not because I'm not. It's because I know, yes, Freddy's coming, but he's not coming yet. We're being warned of Freddy coming. Whereas with this, it kind of felt like it was thrown in for like fans, like that. It was just fan gratification, and I was like, you haven't used that right.
I mean, I think the whole film is obviously fan. It's for fans, and it wouldn't exist if fans didn't demand that it existed.
Yep.
And that's kind of double-edged sword because you want it to be good for fans. You want to give them everything that they want from the franchises, but at the same time, you still have to make a good film that makes sense. And a lot of it doesn't make sense. It's good ideas, but it just happens so quickly that everything's just muddled together, and characters automatically just know things. Like there's a moment where later on when they're all sitting around a table, and your guy, played by Jason Ritter, I think his name's Will, after they've escaped from the asylum, he just works it all out, and he's like, "Hey, what if Freddy brought Jason back and to do this and to do that?" And then they're like, "Oh yeah, that must be true." And then they just go to the next location, and you're kind of like,
and it's just because
there's no time to sort of let all that seep in,
Yeah, Deputy Stubbs just happens to have the Camp Crystal file, but again, it's all too convenient. Yeah, it's far too convenient.
I wanted to mention Lachlan Monroe, who plays Stubbs, because I love him. I think he's usually acts in like a comedy role. Was he not? He was in Scary Movie, wasn't he?
I'm pretty sure.
Or some one of those films.
He
anyway.
did one of them.
But I met him a couple of years ago at Dublin, and I got him to sign Freddy versus Jason Stubbs, and spoke to him briefly about the film and stuff. And he's a really lovely guy, and he said he was over the moon to play that part because he's a big horror fan and stuff. And I actually do think he's a decent actor, and his character was needed because they needed to have that segue between the group and the police. And he was the new guy on the force who didn't know the history of the town, and so he was shut out once he started asking questions. But he's still a law-abiding citizen, or not citizen, a policeman, but he wants to do right and he wants to help the kids. So he's the kind of connection between the two, and I quite like that. And he helps to give them some information when they need the information. But yeah, things just happen way too quickly. They all work it out way too quickly, and everything else falls into place too conveniently. They figure it out, and they go back to the asylum to try to get the hypnocil. There's a moment where the guy, the junkie guy,
the J wannabe,
wannabe.
There was literally that moment because you first see him when they're all having the rave out in the cornfield, and he's kind of saying like, "Oh, his guts were hanging out." Because then I was like, "Is this going to be like Scream 3 and there's going to be a fucking Jay and Silent Bob fucking cameo in here?" Because that would have fucking delighted me because I didn't remember that.
No,
this guy is like a fucking Jay from Jay and Silent Bob wannabe, like the wee hat and the long hair and all. And it's just like that's someone's watched Jay and Silent Bob recently and went, I think for a stoner.
The thing about this film is it's super tropey. We mentioned it as very like Scream and those kind of slashers, the way it's kind of structured. But the characters are all paper thin. They're all just copied and pasted from other films. We don't have any. I think Monica Keena is pretty good as the leading girl, Laurie. Emotionally, she's actually got a really good range, and she can bring the emotion. I'm not a massive fan of everyone else apart from who we mentioned previously.
Yeah, she's still the template virgin, which again gets a fucking shout out in this with her fucking dream when they're like, "We know who the real virgin is," and then it's like, "Come to daddy," which again we get a Freddy come to daddy moment, but again, we've seen that before.
Yeah,
we've seen it a couple of times before. Wait, did we need it in this one? Her father hadn't done anything or been a weirdo or an alcoholic prior to that, so yeah, but yes, the stoner moment when he's like, "Better have a little joint."
So he stops when they're doing this extremely important thing that literally means life and death for all of them and all the other kids in Springwood and potentially the rest of the fucking USA or the world. They don't know how far he could go. He decides to stop for a smoke break. And then something happens that I'd completely forgotten about.
Fucking Alice in Wonderland reference.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I'd forgotten about it too. And then it fucking happened. I was like, oh, fuck. As soon as it started happening, I was like, fuck. I remember this now. Fucking Caterpillar Freddy with his bong. Me,
I was kind of like,
weird.
What is this thing that's crawling out of this fucking?
But he doesn't speak. He doesn't say anything to him though either. Like he doesn't do like a witty Freddy thing. He doesn't say
Yeah.
like he doesn't do a quip. He doesn't even like try and paraphrase Alice in Wonderland with some weird Freddy shit. He just
Yeah.
fucking crawls into the room, pulls a bong out, takes a hit of it, and then like blows it in your boy's face, and then he goes to chase it, and then it fucking crawls in his mouth.
Yeah, it's a very weird.
Uh,
Like you could have cut that whole segment out and
yeah.
fleshed out some of the other cool stuff that they'd done.
I thought it was cool whenever he did take possession of him, and then he's putting him to sleep. I was like, that's kind of cool. But the whole like lead up to him possessing him by like crawling in his mouth as a giant caterpillar, fucking wild.
It's such a weird contrast because you have some really quite deep scenes with the guy, the brother, who watched his brother commit suicide,
Mm-hmm.
and Will being in the asylum, and that's all quite deep stuff, and it's quite well written, and it's good premise and a good concept. And then you have some really weird shit like this. I also wanted to give a shout out to Zach Ward, who plays um the brother.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes up from the bath full of blood.
That's actually, yeah, that scene was fucking
Yeah,
like
he's
hard. Like,
really cool, and obviously he speaks like Freddy, but he follows us on Twitter, so shout out to Zach Ward.
thanks.
Um, so you get some weird scenes, and that was just a fucking. That was to me, that was the worst scene, and the pinball scene was kind of hard to look
Because
at.
that comes pretty much straight after this,
Yeah,
yeah. So
but that was worst scene in the whole film for me.
yeah.
As we mentioned, Jason starts kind of taking over after the party, and Jason gets the kills there. And
Mm-hmm.
do you know what? I want to say one scene that I fucking loved was the scene at the cornfield when they light Jason on fire, and
Fucking
he's
just
walking through the
fucking walking
cornfield
through, yeah.
in flames. How
Mm-hmm.
cool and how fucking badass was that? Like,
That's fucking great. And then he
so
ends up
awesome.
soaked it. Even when he's soaked in beer, I was like, fucking there was a little bit, but it was like Stone Cold Steve Austin, like,
Uh,
yeah, beer.
some glass is gonna break here, but it's class when the guy's running away from him, and you think he's getting away, and all of a sudden, a just flaming machete comes from nowhere through
Yeah,
the guy. It's fucking awesome, man.
it's great.
Jason's
Yeah.
such a cool, because he's got that cool silhouette, and he's such a slow monster.
Mm-hmm.
He walks like kind of Frankenstein-esque, but obviously a wee bit more kind of personality. But it's such a cool image, and that was for me one of the best looking scenes in the whole film, and I really loved it.
Yeah.
Um,
Talking about how things look, this film
oh,
oh,
go ahead,
oh,
Danny.
this film had a fair few hues.
What
And
kind of hues?
no just the blue hues.
No,
They had red hues and
and
green
green hue.
hues.
There's loads of fucking
So
a blue
many
hues.
hues. The hues, but that's the thing. Did you know? So, like, and when Freddy's in control, it's all red hues.
Mhm,
When Jason took control, it went to green hues.
mhm.
In the real world, stuff had blue hues.
Yeah, so I think there's a bit of a blue tinge to the whole film
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. Um, as is usually the case, particularly at nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a very, very obvious color change when we got to the fight scene towards the end, which the first fight scene was pretty shit. Let's be real. It's pretty
That's the one that
naff.
drew. Well, it starts fine when they're kind of like close up, hand to hand, doing combat. Like that's cool enough. That's fine. Like I said, Freddy seems to be doing this kind of martial arts style of fighting. Jason's doing like wrestling style of fighting. That for me, I was like, I'm enjoying watching this fight. And you see Freddy slashing, and Jason's trying to get in with with the machete and throwing big digs and all. But yeah, that scene. So it was when Jason had been put under by the wee junkie boy who was possessed by Freddy, injecting him with the stuff in the asylum. And when he's under, and Freddy is Mama Voorhees again, and is, oh my god, that bit when he's like shouting at him, and even though we've never really, I don't know about any of the other Friday the 13th films, as I say, I've only seen 3 of them, but that moment whenever Freddy changes from being his ma to Freddy, and you can ever so slightly see Jason's eyes behind the mask, and that sudden realization that, you know, it's not my mum is, I was like, that's a little moment. Like, that's a really, that was really good. I actually really liked that. And yeah, and then it goes into them. He's like, you know, you're a bad dog, and you put bad dogs down. I was like, again, it's one of those things when those two are on screen together, when they're doing their thing. I was having a good time. I was enjoying myself. Whenever anyone else was on screen, I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. Apart from the brother in the bathtub scene, that fucking set me on edge. Like, but yeah, that fight. But then, yeah, whenever Freddy's taking the advantage and he's like flinging around the room and he's throwing stuff at him and he's fucking doing pinball and it's fucking making the pinball noise and all, I was like,
yeah, it's a bit over the top.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We've seen Freddy do stuff like this before, like, but it was done so much better. Like in Dream Warriors, he does a lot of magic-y shit, but it's cool. And this just, it didn't. I don't think it captured the charm of Freddy's evil magic, his dream magic, as well as the other films
Yeah,
did.
it felt like it was cutting corners. It was just like, oh, Freddy can just do anything. He's omnipotent. He can literally do anything. Whatever we need to happen to get from A to B, we can make happen, and we don't need to explain it. And that's okay. Like, I get the rules, you know, but I do feel like there still has to be some sort of rules there. And I think that you know,
it
I don't know.
Did lead nicely. It was a bit silly, but then it does lead nicely into that moment where the water pipe breaks and we find out, oh shit, Jason's afraid of water.
Yeah.
And then he makes all the water appear around him and then reduces him mentally and physically to a child again. And he lifts the mask off and he's like, a face only a mother could love. And then he fucking sticks the claw in his head.
Yeah, and
I was like, fuck.
Yeah, that's really good. Like, that's really good psychological stuff, and it
really solid,
really
except
deep.
Has the fucking wanky when he sticks the claw in, and then it fucking does that fucking cut where like it's like the camera's moving into his brain and going through his nerves, and it does all that fucking early 2000s fucking blood vessels and synaptic nerves, but it's all real digital looking. Again, probably cool for the time. Wank noise.
There's a great line in this, and it happens before that fight where Laurie actually says it, and it's just a really good line that kind of sums up what they do try to do, and it's a foreshadows a little bit of the end of the film, where she says that Jason was killed by water and Freddy was killed by fire. How can we use that? And that's just a fucking great line, and it's kind of like, it's so easy. It's right there in front of you.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where I was like, I get what they're trying to do. I get that that's them trying to reason like the answer to their situation. But I'm not gonna lie, see when she said that, I was like, that's wank.
I loved it. I was all like, over it.
He died in water, so we gotta get him with water, and he died in fire, so we gotta get him with fire. Yeah, I was like, fuck up.
No, I loved it, man. I thought it was cheesy, but as it was, I loved cheesy. It. And it does foreshadow the end of the film.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
Which is a hell of a fucking set piece and a hell of a finale to a film. I will say they definitely do kind of save the film with the ending, I think. Because the second fight between Freddy and Jason, whenever Freddy is brought into the real world, so Laurie can do what Nancy can do in the first film. She can bring things from her dream into the real world, and she brings Freddy in.
Which coincidentally, she only finds out like midway through when she pulls
the ear off
Freddy's ear through, and it turns to maggots.
I know, that's a class scene as well.
Moment, yeah.
But she's able to bring him in, and just into the cabin at the moment when Jason is starting to lose his rag. And that scene where Freddy realizes that he's in the real world now, and he turns around and sees Jason, just the big hulking monster with the flames behind him, and then the fucking new metal soundtrack kicks in, and it's like, oh,
yeah, it does get you going. Like, and it is like, apart from again, the thing that gets us with the fights is whenever they do, there's a wild lot of they're doing lots of like fucking really over exaggerated pulls of the actors and saying, they're going fucking flying miles from one punch and stuff. Like, enough of that, but see that moment where Freddy's just been pulled out, he's kind of like, whoo, and then he starts fucking slashing at Jason slashing back, but he fucking fucks Freddy through the window and then like pulls him along the cabin. I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. This is the shit we want to see. We
Yeah.
don't want to see the superhero punches.
No.
We just want to see like a real fight with a little bit of magic and a little bit of paranormal stuff happening. But like just get fucking and get stuck
wrecked.
in each other.
Get wrecked. Yeah.
So Freddy has the advantage in the nightmare realm, but whenever they come back into the real world, Jason has the advantage.
Yeah, Freddy does hold his own, to be fair.
He does.
Like, he
does
gets
a
a few
job,
good
man.
digs in, and that fucking whenever he fucking has Jason on the ground, he fucking plunges the fucking claws into his eyes. I was like
he's
that,
dead.
Yeah,
he's fucking dead.
You just want to, that is what we want to see from the fight. We just want to see them fucking tear each other.
And the gore in the film, there's pretty good gore in it, man. And you mentioned the makeup. I'm not a big fan of. I think Jason looks great. I'm not a big fan of when we see close-ups of Freddy's makeup. You can see that it's. I mean, obviously we know what it is, but it's very rubbery and I don't know.
I think,
but again, I think too rubbery.
We've had, because we've we've kind of talked throughout all the Nightmare on Elm Street films. We kind of talked about the makeup in each of the films of the series, and I think we kind of discussed like what we like about it, what we don't like about it, and I think this one kind of has a similar vibe to maybe the makeup of sort of like 4 and 5. So it's kind of like, this is fine. Like, it's not the topest quality. I still think Demon Freddy, of all Freddy's looks in this, because I think he kind of has 3. There's kind of like him in the dreams. There's one point where he's not gone full Demon Freddy, but he has wee Demon Freddy teeth in.
Like fangs almost.
And also, so he kind of has sort of 3 looks in this.
Well, at the very start,
Freddy in this is the best.
At the very start, when he's in hell, technically, I think he's in hell at the start, and he's got the white eyes with the sort of small pupils and the veins and all. That kind of is a cool look, and almost looks as if it's been taken on from New Nightmare a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you see the fangs, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't remember him having actual fangs. Like, I know his teeth are dirty, like
monkey teeth.
Yeah, but
then he gets his monkey teeth back for a bit.
He does, yeah, and then exactly. It does feel like a bit of a mishmash, and they were trying to do too much. Again, I'm coming back to that whole thing where they just do way too much in this film for it to all really make sense.
Tone it down a bit, lads.
I mean, the pacing of the film is completely fucked. It's all over the place. The pacing, and the editing isn't the best either. It's a bit clunky, and there is actually scenes where it literally cuts from like halfway through a scene to like there's no real fluidity to the scenes. I think for a lot of it, but at the end of the day, whatever you feel at the end of the film is going to be how you think about the film, and as we just mentioned, the finale is phenomenal.
It's great, and even the fight leading into that fucking whenever we see Laurie and Will are like lying on that dock, and you hear the wet thudding of feet, and you see the machete, and then the camera pans up, and it's not fucking Jason, it's Freddy, and you're like, fuck, and he's got the one arm ripped off, and he's like, I'm gonna get you, bitch, and then the fucking Freddy's own fucking claw comes through his chest. I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And then fucking Jason falling into the water. The one thing watching that as Jason slowly sank down into Crystal Lake. I don't know why, but I was like just waiting for a fucking Terminator like thumbs up.
That's kind of the vibe though. I know we're joking, but genuinely is kind of the vibe. I was thinking he did kind of become that character a little bit where he was the protector. It was fucking great. I love the finale. I think it's just so good. Such a great set piece with the fire and the water and what they do on that, it's just a big pier out into the lake, and obviously they have this great fight, and then you have that moment where, as you mentioned, you think it's Jason and it's Freddy with the machete, and then it's his real glove that kills him. Well, takes him down, doesn't kill him, but
why doesn't it kill him, Gav? What happens? How do we know it doesn't kill
Freddy
him?
doesn't die. Neither dies. So the question that was on everyone's lips is who wins the fight. So obviously we think that Freddy has died at the hands of Jason, or they both died, and but we get that cool little
moment
wink from Freddy where Jason's got the head, and you think, oh, he's won the fight, and then Freddy looks at the screen and winks, and you think, no, actually, Freddy never loses.
He had to get that final fourth wall break in, and yeah, again, it's just another wee moment where I think for me, I was kind of like, even though, yeah, Freddy's kind of the big bad in this, I was like, I still love Freddy. Like that cheeky at the end, I was like, I still fucking love you, Freddy. You could do no wrong.
It was the perfect ending, because I think if you're a fan of Jason, you'll love that ending. If you're a fan of Freddy, you'll love it, and most people love them both anyway. So it's just it's the best way to end the film, and I really do think that they saved the film with that finale and that ending. That they could potentially do other films, which never happened.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to say, do you think that was the intention? Do you think they had fully intended to be like Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, Freddy versus Jason versus Michael?
Yeah, there's definitely that 100%. That was the intention, was that they were going to do a sequel to this. They were going to do other spin-offs. The Ash thing was definitely a thing that was kind of. I say it wasn't going to happen because I don't think negotiations ever actually happened, but it was put onto the table, and they obviously this was going to hopefully lead into other spin-offs and about other horror icons fighting each other and doing more crossovers. And I think, man, I can't believe that there hasn't been any of that stuff since that. Again, it all comes down to studios and executives and rights issues and all that, but at the end of the day, fans want to see it, so let's just fucking do it finally.
What if a studio came to you and said, right, we want to do another crossover, we want to do another versus type horror film where we bring two franchises together, who would you want to see? Who would you want to see face off against who?
I think now, or just kind of like
now, if they came to you now and they were like, you can have any characters you want, any franchise you want, what two would you face off against each other?
Putting Freddy and Jason to one side, because I'd love to see a sequel to that. I definitely think Ash versus Pinhead would be a cool thing. Ooh, because you've got Ash and the Deadites with the Cenobites. Deadites and Cenobites. It just makes sense, man.
And then the fucking Necromonicon with the puzzle box, and
it just makes sense. I mean, you could write that. You could come up with different ideas, and it would all work because it's so close together and it ties in well with each other. I think that would really work. I think I would love to read the ending for one of the scripts that Shannon Swift wrote with Pinhead. They do talk about it, as I said, on one of those podcasts, so please go and follow them on Twitter, because there's so many different ideas that came from this film that never happened, and are the really, really, really interesting ideas. One of the ideas actually that we didn't mention was that in one of the earlier drafts they had written in that Freddy was one of the counselors at Camp Crystal Lake, and he actually molested Jason. So that would have been pretty deep.
That would have been dark, yeah.
And it would have been very dark.
Interesting.
But that was an idea, yeah. That was. I think that actually was quite close to happening. And then obviously they changed it in the end. But there's so many good ideas that could have happened out of this script. What about you? If you could pick,
if I could pick
a crossover,
I would like to see, right. So Jason, obviously, as we know from discussing this film, is the protector of Camp Crystal Lake. That's his territory. You come down there, he'll fuck you. With a machete, not a stick, machete. But what if, right? Billy and Gizmo on a wee camping trip, and Gizmo gets wet at Camp Crystal Lake.
Oh.
And the gremlins start wrecking Camp Crystal Lake, and Jason has to deal with them.
Amazing.
And it's just a load of gremlins versus this one behemoth of a man or
just
entity.
Just to throw in a little curveball there, what if like Swamp Thing or something appeared as well from the lake?
Ooh, just hanging out, and then Bruce the shark, that must be there too. Just any aquatic being or anything that do water. Just
I've swam the whole way from fucking Amity Island here, and
well, my long swim, boys.
I know.
It's fucking freezing. But yeah, I think Gremlins. I think
class.
It'd be cool to see a load of Gremlins like just terrorize a neighborhood, but in that neighborhood is another being that's like, here, lads, this is my town. What is that?
Yeah, you know? I think that would be difficult to come up to story. But it would definitely be something I would watch. I don't care what the story is. I would definitely watch it.
The story could literally just be Jason defends Camp Crystal Lake against
Jason
Gremlins.
wakes up and is like, fuck's sake, these bastards are in like camp now.
They're watching fucking Snow White in one of the cabins.
But yeah, that sounds like fucking that would be a lot of fun.
Be good crack. Be good crack.
There's so many, man, you could put together. I can't believe there isn't more. I really hope more. Yeah. I really hope that studios get together and start doing these events, because I think horror deserves it. The horror community deserves it. We need an event. We've had so many universes in the MCU and DC and all these crossovers. Star Wars is getting big, and they're all, let's fucking do something for horror. Let's get another.
I think that's
event.
the thing. We've talked previously. I think we've mentioned in previous videos, Universal kind of wanted to bring back the Universal monsters and stuff, and it's like that's all well and good, but like I think I would far rather see like the likes of Freddy versus Jason versus Michael versus Demons than the Universal monsters, to be honest. I don't particularly have much of an affinity for the Universal monsters. Maybe you would from your Frankenstein t-shirt.
I love them.
You do, but again, so far, any movies they brought out to try and revive it.
Yeah, it's difficult. Flopped. It's difficult, yeah.
Whereas I think now, if they were to try and do something like this, I think they could maybe pull it off.
Make it happen.
Yeah. Again, that's it. It's all the multiverse stuff with the superhero and all. Again, people are getting fatigued with superhero. Maybe we need some horror multiverse.
We do. We definitely do.
Yep.
Right. Well, we'll just leave it there then, because I think that's the way to leave it. And if you have any ideas about what universes in the horror realm you'd like to see crossover, please do let us know. Drop them in the comments below. And also, if you want us to watch the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, we will do that.
Yeah.
We don't want to, but we will do it. And so, as always, please go and follow us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and go and visit the website at www.thefrightclubni.com. And Danny, what else?
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that little bell icon so you get notified of whenever we post up any new content.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on Freddy versus Jason as well. I know we talked about the crossovers there and what you wanted as a crossover, but let's know what you think of the film. I think most people do enjoy the film for what it is. And we'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode of Monday Night Frights. As always, stay safe, take care, all the best.
Bye.
Bitch.